Mark, Sridhar, thank you for being here with us. I wanted to start with an anecdote about my own experience recently. I stayed in a Hyatt hotel, and I left an item behind in my room. I left a jacket, a running jacket behind, and I could not find online. Well, this is maybe a bad thing. I couldn't find online a number for that specific hotel, but I had to call the general number, and I got connected to an AI agent, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. I'm going to get stuck in some sort of decision tree. I'm never going to get this jacket back. I'm never going to figure out how to connect to this hotel. And it just said, explain in plain language what you'd like. And I said, I left this jacket at this particular branch of the hotel. I was just staying there. It said, no problem. Connected me directly to Lost and Found of that hotel. They had my jacket, and it was great. I got it back. So that was a delightful AI agent experience. And Mark, I want you to talk, though, I mean, that was one use case, but how is Hyatt really using AI across your organization? And to what extent is data, because this is a conversation about data, is data the key kind of underpinning of that?
Sure, thank you. We're using AI in a variety of different ways, but let's just start with sort of the front end of commerce. So we've built out several agentic platforms so far. One is to help our sales team be more efficient and effective to respond to the more than 1.5 million RFPs we get every year from corporate customers. That actually has turned out to be very successful. We've grown our market share in group business and freed up a full day a week per salesperson who's otherwise working on this. So the ability for them to go and optimize the remainder of the revenue stream for the hotel has been really fantastic. We actually launched a generative interface for the search function within Hyatt.com at the beginning of 25, and that's actually been phenomenal because instead of date range, number of rooms, and city, or even individual hotel, you now do free form prose, regular language, and we actually learn a lot about you. You could say, my wife and I are taking our 15-year-old son and our 12-year-old daughter, and here's what we'd like to do. We've just learned that you've got 2 kids. We look at the date range and say, spring break, ? Follow up for next year. Third, we just found out that you like golf, a Michelin star restaurant, a great water park for your kids, and a great spa. All those things are important to thinking about how we interact with you. And then there are a bunch of other things that are helping our hotel teams be much more efficient and effective in the use of data. We have a massive amount of data on all of our hotels. We operate over 1,500 hotels in 78 countries. And actually, without Snowflake, we wouldn't have been in a position to even begin that. And then fast forward, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, Snowflake became our partner in building the agentic platform to actually do all the analytics behind the signals that we are sending to our hotel teams every week to say, here's some patterns that we're seeing. Might you consider this? Or here's our recommended action. And the feedback loop that one of your prior panelists had talked about to actually allow for the cognitive loop to actually work is really the critical piece of that, and that's actually what we have underway. So those are just a few examples.
Right. And Sridhar, I wanted to talk to you about, a couple years ago, if you wanted to run these agentic experiences, the advice a lot of people are getting, well, you have to get all your data together. You have to go put it in a giant data lake. People were, a lot of the consultants were out there selling these very large data transformation projects. And I know, because we spoke at Davos this year for a while, that really this is sort of an outdated way of thinking, that actually now it's possible with these agents to potentially keep the data in separate buckets, but to run an agent layer on top and to actually get the meaning you want and the right information to those agents.
Yeah, I think 2 things have happened, Jeremy. One is that by using things like agentic AI, specialized coding agents, simply your ability to get data projects done faster has just gone up, sometimes by an order of magnitude. Things that used to take years can now be finished in months. But the other point is a really interesting one about AI, which is that it comes with built-in glue, meaning that you can talk to 2 different systems, you can stitch the data together, because these models are very smart at figuring out that kind of context. It just makes for much faster progress. You do benefit if you want to run like a massive machine learning algorithm that wants to optimize the guest experience. You benefit from having the data sit in a platform like Snowflake. But I think what AI has also created for all of us, and Mark was telling me about some of the things he got done with his team, and they're mind-blowing, is the speed at which you can actually go try an idea and see is there a here
Right.
before you embark on some 6-month or 2-year migration. I think that's the big unlock.
Got it. And Sridhar, you've talked about moving from sort of systems of record to systems of insight to systems of action. What does that really mean?
Well, analytic systems like Snowflake came to be because transactional systems, your CRM system, or even your HR system, had super limited capabilities analytically. They were fine for, I want to file for vacation from this day to this date, something specific about you. But on the other hand, if you wanted to get any kind of general trend around when are people taking vacation, when are people actually showing up at the best Hyatt hotels, you needed analytic systems in order to be able to do that. I think what AI, back to the glue point that I was making earlier, has made possible is that now you can combine that kind of insight with the ability to take action. For example, in our own case, we use this technology called MCP to connect to our Slack system, to connect Gmail, et cetera, to the core agentic platform that lets us access Snowflake data.
Right.
This means that it's super easy. It's just as easy for me to say, how much revenue did Snowflake make yesterday and what was the variance, to summarize the Slack channel for me because it's a lot and I don't really have time to read the whole thing. It's like bringing all of these things together that I think is going to be a big unlock for agentic AI.
Got it. Mark, as a customer of these services, I really wanted to ask you, you have so many vendors out there, every software vendor you use at Hyatt is now trying to sell you on why they should be the agentic AI orchestration layer. Everybody wants to be the orchestration layer, including Snowflake here. But from a customer perspective, how are you making the choice of which vendor to go with? Where do you think it makes sense to actually, this is who we want to partner with to create that orchestration layer?
So I don't know how you know that, but it's true. Every single one.
Yeah.
I think there are two things that I think about. One is the complexity and speed required to get through something, and the expertise involved. And I think those are the areas in which we will turn to individual experts. I personally think that the separation that Sridhar just mentioned about a system of record versus the analytic layer versus the agentic layer makes all the sense in the world to me, because we benefited from that thinking in being able to get things going through a lot of testing and learning and experimentation much more quickly than we would have had we done it serially and otherwise, and especially if we just tried to use one company to do it all. So I think there are different companies that have been stood up. I'm not going to name any by name, but they specialize in certain areas, and I'm a huge believer in not reinventing the wheel. So very happy to work with them. It's also true that we've stood up the generative search function, the RFP response writer on our own. We're currently working on one which actually is an intersection of both internal data and external data. And actually, Snowflake is helping us do this. This is why, this is the big evolution of our relationship. We're pulling in not just hotel operating performance, but customer data, internal and external, TripAdvisor ratings, Yelp ratings, blog feedback, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
And we're ingesting that and actually processing that alongside what's going on in that particular market, and with that hotel's particular customer base, with all of the internal information that we collect ourselves. And we're utilizing that to try to provide signals to our hotel teams. And we as a company are very purpose-driven. So our purpose as a company is to care for people so they can be their best. In order to care for someone, you have to practice empathy and then take action. So we understood where the friction points were for the hotel teams and where they would benefit the most from getting assistance to make their jobs easier, but also get them focused on the things that were the most important, most impactful, and leave more time for them to actually engage with our guests.
Right.
So this has been a big unlock. And I think, if I may, the big difference in our relationship with Snowflake has been, they didn't come and say, we're a hammer in search of a nail, this is what we're going to build for you. When we were building this platform I just described, they're working with us. So they're practicing empathy,
Right.
and sitting down and saying, what do you really need? How is this really going to be used? We need to go talk to hotel teams. We need to understand. And I think that's a big difference maker, because a lot of the sessions this morning or midday have been around the frame, the technology, the stack, et cetera, chips. But the human factor is huge. And I think the absorption, not just adoption, because I think Microsoft and Amazon just abandoned the token tracking that they were doing.
Right.
There's a reason for that, right? That's not absorption. That's just using it. Maybe it's productive, maybe it isn't. I'm looking for actual results at the end of the day.
Right.
So I'm looking for absorption, people who are really taking it in, understanding it, and utilizing it.
Right.
And I think building this platform that we're building so that it can be absorbed and utilized is really critical.
Great. I want to go to the audience, see if we can get a question from the audience. If not, I've got lots of questions. Not seeing any right now, so I'm going to carry on. Sridhar, one of the things we're starting to see is because everyone's competing to be this agent orchestration layer, and a lot of the traditional vendors are very, particularly a lot of the traditional data vendors, are very worried about being disintermediated. You're starting to see people putting in what they're calling toll gates. They don't want to allow free access for a third-party agent on their system, certainly they don't want to allow that under the current license arrangement. They're going to charge something quite a bit extra for that if they're going to allow it at all. What do you feel about this? Is Snowflake, are you ever going to gate third-party agents on your platform? And what do you make of this whole trend?
I think practicing what Mark just said, empathy for the customer, is a really important quality that distinguishes people that see a bright future ahead versus one that want to, from people that simply want to protect what they have. And the other thing I'll say is that sometimes we forget the fact that technologies are about creating great experiences, whether it's for internal users, the people that use Snowflake within Mark's team, or for the guests that show up. And the more your products help people create these great experiences, the more successful you're going to be. Everyone, yes, aspires to be top dog, but you need to create great experiences. Yeah. That's what it's going to all be about. We believe in interoperability. I tell people, you can use our interfaces, the app that we create, directly, if you like. On the other hand, if you have your own application and you simply want to use an API to embed an agent from us, that's perfectly fine. If on the other hand, you just want to write a SQL query to get at the data using a technology like MCP, that too is fine. We also make sure that we write data in a format that can be read by other engines. So at every layer of the stack, interoperability is the name of the game.
Critical.
And I think it also reflects our confidence and belief in that future that we want to create together. And I think being customer first is a must.
Right. And my intuition is customers are probably not going to like the idea of gating, Mark. Is that right? I mean,
no way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just replaced all of our core systems on property, our central reservation system, property management system, point of sale, and revenue management system. Not many sane people do that all at the same time. We did, and thank God we made it through on budget and time. That was more luck than intellect. But the one thing that distinguished our choices in what we were going to do is I wanted basically a layer of these systems to be agnostic to whatever new hotel that we were going to take over. Whatever systems they were running, I wanted them to be able to plug in. So that the central reservation system that we adopted already has 140 different property management systems API'd into their system. So that means your turnaround time and being able to bring a hotel on is very fast. So if there was a gate there, and that was an expense that had to be borne by our hotel owners, I would resist that significantly.
Right.
As one example, that's a very specific practical example in hotels, but it's true generally.
Right. I wanted to ask a question about, we've just been to this period on Wall Street, people refer to it as a SaaSpocalypse. Snowflake has been, to some extent, a victim of this, although recently your stock has come back very strongly. I wanted to ask from a customer perspective, because the thesis sort of behind the SaaSpocalypse is, thanks to AI coding agents, customers and large enterprises are just going to start building all their own bespoke software. They're going to build up their own agents. They're not going to need the offerings from these software vendors. Mark, is that true from your perspective?
I think there are some cases in which we will actually build our own, but there are many cases in which we will use third parties. I like that flexibility. I like being able to make that buy-build decision. And sometimes it's almost a hybrid, where we're getting certain input and certain services from partners, but also having a team internally working on it. But the relationship between the vendor and us, our own team, is really the critical factor there. So I think it's not a clean yes or no.
And Sridhar, I imagine you're going to tell me that the SaaS apocalypse is over and Snowflake's been oversold. But what's your view of what's happened and the market reaction in the last 6 months?
Every company that's in software truly needs to internalize that the cost of creating new software or changing existing software is dropping precipitously. And anyone who doesn't absorb that is in for a rude shock. I compare this to, let's say, blogging and media in the early 2000s. Sorry, there's a before and there's an after. The early internet made both creation and distribution super easy. It had a set of consequences that we are still living through. I think software is going to go through a similar sort of change. And so companies need to think very hard in terms of what is their durable advantage. It might be that they're able to provide infrastructure much better. Or it can be that they're able to provide a set of governance capabilities or capabilities that our customers want, that they look at and go, it's not worth it for my team to be building this.
Yeah.
These folks will be better at doing this. And so we think a lot in terms of how do we truly meet customers where they are, what we need to provide for them, and how do we also stay at the cutting edge of what is possible with software.
Fantastic. There is a question in the audience. I see someone with their hand up. We're going to go to her very quickly. We don't have that much time, so please be brief.
Your perspective on data sovereignty for Snowflake and the work you might be doing, and for Mark, perspective on longevity and wellness entering the hospitality space.
All right. Maybe we can ask you both to answer the same question. Let's talk about data sovereignty. Maybe both of you talk about data sovereignty very quickly.
Data sovereignty is real, and it's here to stay. We just it obviously comes in different forms, in everything from I'm in Germany, my data center needs to be operated in such a way that it cannot be shut down because somebody in the US says shut it down. So we work with a number of, we work with the hyperscalers, we work with others to make sure that we respect the wishes of the local government. We don't have a choice.
Right.
And Snowflake is helped here by the fact that
I want Mark to get in here before we run out of time.
I have nothing to add.
Oh, okay. Oh, that was easy. That was really easy. I'll let you continue then. What about longevity? Do you have 30 seconds on longevity?
It's alive and well. Sorry for that. No, we actually bought a business called Miraval, which has an extraordinary well-being content, all based on mindfulness. And we're extending and expanding that across the company because especially corporate customers want to integrate more mindfulness and well-being experiences in their stays, in their group meetings. So it's become a massive business for us, and I think we're just at the beginning.
Well, from data to longevity, there we go. Thank you very much for listening. That's all the time we have.
Thank you all.